water is, and what a perfect precursor to the awesomeness of Xenio that we're looking at in part number, geez, I drooled, 2 of daily number 430, where we learn to be a better gamer. In part 1, we did a whole lot of just bases covering. And I don't mean like in-game bases, like expansions, but making sure that we have the is he building proxy barracks here? Okay, now that I've seen that he's going 2 racks and not gas, I know what I don't need to worry about. I know what I do need to worry about. When we see that there's this tremendous window where we can do whatever up to about the 8-minute mark. Terran kind of has to be on the back footing. Sure, the Terran can build non-stop Marines and just leave them in the center of the map, but we still saw Xenio step forward with a lot of Speedlings, which would have either A, killed off all the Marines that were in the middle of the map, or B, walked straight to the front door to build some Banelings, which is exactly what we saw. And upon our analysis of Supernova's situation, we can see that this has a fairly high percentage of being able to do damage. And I want to emphasize that this moment right here can win, but it's not designed to win. It can, but it doesn't have to. It could, but it doesn't need to. And this is increasingly becoming the hyper-modern theme across all matchups. I'm going to do a huge attack that will not win the game. It can, but it won't necessarily do that. It will just end us up in a different situation. Protoss players do this to force the Terran to delay drops. Zerg players do this to force their Zerg opponent to build more Lings, Banelings, and Spines instead of drones. Very, very, very common thing to start seeing more and more and more. Be on the lookout for it. Cool. Oh, Terrans even go 5-6 racks aggression against Protoss. Here's a really cool timing. Terrans will go 5 racks after they expand and just attack move straight to the Protoss base. Almost guaranteed to lose all those units. But it forces the Protoss to make gateway units, the expensive stalkers in a lot of circumstances. And this means it delays the Protoss's tech. Protoss tech delayed, I as Terran can be building SCVs this whole time. Cool theme. Damn it, it shows up a lot. I've been seeing it a lot in my research this week. So this is going to end us up in something different. I can see the whole chat just be like, hit the play button, we want to see explosions. Alright, fine. Let's watch some things explode. Let me put it on normal speed, just so you can see. It didn't win us the game. It's very common to follow this up with more Zerglings, but I think it is improper to follow this up with more Banelings. I think it's appropriate to conserve the gas at this point. Inches away from winning, but in this particular circumstance, I want to come back to the unit tab. We have a Zerg player who is ahead on workers, doing good on that front. Does not have a lot of good tech, has just started this +1 upgrade. This expansion was actually a bit late. You see these Zerglings that were here, you see how this Zergling has 1 kill. There was an SCV here delaying, so this should be up earlier. At this particular moment in time, this actually looks quite a bit like a pretty typical mid-game for Zerg vs Terran. It has a lot of similar themes, of the Zerg being ahead in the worker count, and the Terran being ahead in the overall production facility count, and this sort of thing. Again, no Banelings coming out for Xenio. He's just going to start poking around and all this good jazz. And suddenly he might feel a little bit like, uh-oh, I certainly hope I have enough to be able to get my layer up soon. Second evolution chamber, love this. I think it's a huge danger to fall into the trap of, wow, I deviated from going to my layer tech, so now that I've deviated, oh gosh, I better get that up quickly. No, Xenio is doing the Stefano logic. Stefano generally says, if I want to stay more defensive, I'm going to delay my layer as long as possible. And if I'm delaying my layer tech, I may as well focus on the upgrades for my Evo chamber units. So now we see Supernova. Looks like he bounced back amazingly quickly. There used to be a 20 food deficit, but again, that food is deceptive because there are actually 5 fully finished production structures and a reactor. coming back to this differential, yeah, Zerg's ahead in the worker count. And as a result, Zinio is going to do everything he can to exploit his worker lead. He's going to get upgrades, he's going to get more hatches and expansions, and what he's not going to do is he's not going to rush the layer. If I have a worker lead, the way I exploit the worker lead is not by derping and trying to get air units as fast as possible. It's trying to think of what would let me exploit my workers. Well, getting a lot of units would let me exploit my workers. Did he actually just build a Baneling nest? Was that a Baneling nest? Did Zinio really go into autopilot there? Wait a minute. Yeah, hey guys, you know what's great? The double Baneling nest. So that way we can research centrifugal hooks and whatever is released in Heart of the Swarm at the same time. Wait, this isn't Heart of the Swarm. Good, let's cancel it. Excellent. Cool. I hope there's at least one person watching right now who has never seen StarCraft or a daily before and hears me lauding about exploiting workers. Guys, beautiful. Think about how to exploit your workers. You want to exploit them as much as possible. Whatever, here I go. Coming back up. Wonderful, guys. Great. I'd also like to point out that Zinio is suddenly even in the food count with Supernova. Just to emphasize this for the billionth time, it's at this very moment when people think, oh my god, Supernova's boned, Zinio has this in the bag because they look at this food differential. But the fact is that Supernova's easily going to hit equilibrium faster than Zerg, because Zerg is just now building all his hatchies up. So again, it's just a little bit of a different situation. But Zinio's doing the right thing by exploiting these sorts of things. The upgrades. He's ahead in the upgrade front. Where's the... There it is. There's the +1 upgrade, quite far behind. And I think this is also a very smart thing to do in this particular circumstance. I want to envision for a moment if we've been in a situation where we have to rely on Zerglings. Actually, let me rephrase that. We're in a situation where we are relying largely on Zerglings and their upgrades, getting +1/+1, going like really quickly. That's eating up a lot of our gas. Making sure we get some Baneling upgrades. That's eating up a lot of our gas. And we're suddenly under a lot of pressure. The Infestor is a much faster option and integrates a lot better with the Zergling upgrades when compared to Mutalisks or something like that. Mutalisks are great if we have the time to get them up, if we have the leisure to do them, but they're not like this necessary needed component. Stefano chooses to do this, just opens with a lot of Zerglings and a lot of upgrades, and then winds up going Infestor. In this particular circumstance, Xenios sort of siloed himself into this situation, and I think that's great. I think both are fine. Here are the upgrades coming up. Here's this upgrade coming up. I want you to envision for a moment if you had Mutalisks on your mind right now. This, I think, is the biggest juncture that players will struggle with, is if you actually were building a Spire right now, you would finish and be able to make like 5 mutas. We haven't really been mining from this geyser very long. We haven't really been mining from this geyser very long. We have 200 gas mined from each of them. We're trying to get these geysers up. So you know what? Mutalisk's probably going to be out of the question. But what I really love that's interesting is that Zinio's actually getting Spore Crawlers up. These are not anti-Banshee Spore Crawlers. He's actually specifically getting them up to try to deal with drops. There'll be 2 more that arrive over here. But either way, I didn't address this push as much. Cool. Speeding it up. Time to speed it up. Do you guys like how I've had my window open in the last 2 weeks of dailies and we hear the police like 4 times per daily? LA, where it's safe and we have bars on all the windows. On all the windows. Cool. In terms of map coverage, Zinio doing the very smart thing, just positioning some Zerglings around here. I would also like to note how I think critical it is that he has one here and one where the third is. Almost all important decisions in the mid and late game are based upon expansions and how we secure those expansions. Cool stuff coming up here. Per usual, Zinio sees the push coming and just goes ahead and continues to make units. With this style of Ling Infestor, it's, I think, really essential to be aggressive with your expanding. you think of Lings as your mineral units, Infestors as your gas units, but you also have a few extra minerals left over, and you should be expanding with them. So this, I think, is a really cool moment. We see this push coming up. Zenio starts to get his stuff into position. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to hold this off. There's also a drop here at the backside, so this is, I think, the clear option for what we should actually be taking out. He's just going to let this one die. I don't know if he canceled it or not, or had enough time to cancel it. But he quite calmly lets this attack up here, up in the middle, and then he's actually going to cut to the middle and pull back and stop. Obviously, he'd love to be able to finalize this dropship obnoxiousness. Supernova's being really good about this. Still great. We have this third taken care of. In terms of decision-making at this point, there's not that many decisions to make. We're just making Infestors and making Zerglings. But this positioning, I think, is brilliant. Is absolutely brilliant. And Zenio is not going to engage. He's actually genuinely not going to engage. What does this mean? It means one of two things will happen. Well, one, we can cut off reinforcements, and that's obviously a good thing. Terran could try to push right now, which would be a little bit problematic for him because he's on creep. Or Terran could try to retreat, and that would actually be the option that would still kind of get him in a little bit of trouble because he'd have to unsiege. This is trying to delay the retreat as much as possible. It gives us a great advantage. This is something we'll see Zenio do a number of times, where he lets these expansions be big targets, and once Supernova sets up there, he just carefully waits for the right positioning. But this scoop around, followed by a huge wait, is exactly what he wants to do. Obviously, harassment is annoying. We have the Zerglings there to defend that. We saw Zenio, or Supernova pull this group back upon seeing all those units. And then he gets hit with a killer fungal growth. And I want to emphasize, this is not actually luck. This is a moment that's very easy to look at. Oh, his push was going so well. Damn. He clumped his stuff up, and now it's dead. The fact is, one of two things will happen. Supernova will either make a mistake like that, which is terrible, or he can start pushing with his whole army, which also ends up being terrible. Because if we just look at this position right now, alright, if we go to the army tab, whoa, it looks like Supernova is so far ahead. Wow, it looks like he's really scary. But you'll notice that most of the remaining food is actually over here, back in the base. We have 3 tanks worth of food. We have a whole bunch of Marines worth of food. Finally getting a command center. Terran relies on these siege tanks to be slow, so doing these scoop around attacks is awesome. So this is actually somewhat inevitable. What if Supernova started to push really aggressively? Well, we'd hit him from the backside, we'd hit him from the front side, and it wouldn't really be a problem. The only way that Supernova can really hope to peel out in the center is to do these aggressive drops with the Medivacs. Now here's something kind of weird. We're actually seeing a Spire come up from Zenio as his last tech bit. It's very uncommon to get this sort of timing. We'll come back to that in a bit. For the time being, though, Zenio tries to crunch this force, and this is just an amazing position by Supernova. All Terran players should steal that! Steal that! That's so good. No big deal. Just going to continue taking out rocks and expanding. Going Ling Infestor with Burrow. And just re-expands right here. There's literally an army 3 feet away, and he's gonna do it. Nothing but passivity, and look at this. Scouting all the expansions. What a weird time for Terran to take an expansion. But if you've ever played on any server on the frickin' Battle.net universe, there will be some guy that steals those expansions. It's like, oh, he'll never scout here. Zenio scouts there. Aw, yeah. So now, we see one of the benefits of this hatch right here. Actually messed up and lost it, but caught these a little bit out of position. Supernova still did an amazingly good job trying to keep them as alive as possible. Instantly re-expands. And once that army threat's gone, obviously drones, going for a hive, I would, I mean, there's no super clear, easy, cut and dry timing with this hive, but you want to get it kind of fast, but if you're under a huge amount of pressure in the mid-game and you have to be going lings and infestors, it ends up being okay. The big thing is to be taking these expansions a lot in the mid-game, a whole lot. I also love the use of getting Burrow. This reinforces this army a ton. It reinforces most armies a ton, but look at this very unusual mass Spore Crawler mix. And hell, you could even leave just 2 Banelings here, and where really can he drop comfortably? So good. So smooth. More Spore Crawlers. Spine in the middle. Spore Crawler is actually the one kind of extended out. Spore Crawlers continue to be extended out. Now you'll note that after that big push at the start of the game with the Ling Baneling, Zenio is all passivity. And this weirdly timed Spire, this allows us to get kind of a fast +1. He actually missed it for a little time. But the Corruptors are coming up, and this allows us to deal with the drops. This is, I think, the most important moment of the game to highlight strategically. With with Mutalisks, you can use your Mutas to just kill these Medivacs. But we skip the Mutalisk phase here. A lot of players use Creep to sort of run around everywhere, but Zenio is spending Minerals to be anti-drop, and now he's going to get Corruptors up to help him deal with the drops. It's a very weird thing to do. Just going Corruptor. There's no Greater Spire done. He'll have a Greater Spire soon, so it's good that he's getting the Corruptors up now, but at this vulnerable period where Zenio's feeling pretty comfortable versus some big ground attacks, but feeling a little bit less comfortable with a ground attack plus a drop, he just builds some Corruptors, and is going to use them to clean up drops. Specifically, this is for a mix that was Ling, Baneling, Infestor. You can snatch up some Corruptors at this point in time, right before you end up getting that hive. The city is so loud today, I'm actually going to shut the door. Alright, window closing. Ha! None of that outdoors thing to get in my way. Stepping back in. But, yeah. Zenio building a lot of Spine Crawlers to help deal with this. He will eventually build Spine Crawlers here, but actually does not have any problem just letting this totally die off. Now, once again, we have a huge army that wiggled its way over to here. And what can it possibly do for reinforcements? We have some Zerglings here, we have some burrowed Banelings, we have an Overlord spotting this reinforcement path from below. We have all of everything else spotting the reinforcement path from above. We're actually going to see all the tech come down from Zenio. He's getting the Broodlord tech, he's getting the Ultralisk tech, and thank God he's getting the free Zergling bonus damage tech. As these expansions continue to die, we also see Zenio just expanding aggressively away from the attack. Very cool to see this consistent move around with the expansions relative to this army. Before there was a push over here and he expanded to the right. Now there's a push on the right, he expands to the top left. The Overlord speed was also snatched up quite early on, and that's a pretty important component to any ground-based army, is to just have the Overlord speed. Yeah. And I think we actually are just gonna call that the part number 2 of this daily. It's just a nice, clean, simple, easy, straightforward daily. We're just doing a game. When we come back, we're gonna watch just the end tidbits of this daily. And we see that Zenio, having done virtually no engagements, is slowly getting farther and farther and farther ahead, just because he's taking more bases, getting more tech up, and is more than comfortable trying to do all of this while sacking an expansion here, sacking an expansion there, and just not even worrying about it. The worst thing we can do is engage the Terran on poor footing. So we're going to see Supernova has avoided that for so long, and now he's going to have to do it for the game to end, and we'll see how. In part number 3. Part number 3!